a.m. How do you get to do that? Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela TV47KE. So much in store for you. We'll also be taking a look at the newspaper stories and we update you on what is there. Equally, we get discussions that are candid revolving around the issues that will have picked, of course, issues that are making news. But importantly, we try and contemplate, we try and look at the bigger picture with the panelists of the day. So keep it right here. We're expecting so much today as we call upon you to be part and parcel of the session. We kickstart with a story of the events that took center stage yesterday upon that address by President Uhuru Kenyatta, who extended the dusk to dawn curfew for another 30 days. Operational hours for restaurants and eateries also were extended by 1 hour from 7 p.m. previously to now 8 a.m. as bars and pubs remain closed. Zainab Mohammed with the details.
In his 11th COVID-19 address to the nation, President Uhuru Kenyatta extended the dusk to dawn curfew for another 30 days in a bid to contain the COVID-19 pandemic.
That the nationwide curfew that is currently enforced between the hours of 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. daily be and is hereby extended by a further 30 days.
Operation hours for restaurants and eateries have been extended by 1 hour as restaurants licensed to sell alcoholic drinks now allowed to do so during their operational hours.
That the closing time for restaurants and eateries be and is hereby varied by 1 hour from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. effective the 27th of August 2020.
The closure of bars and nightclubs will continue for another 30 days as the head of state directed the Ministry of Health in conjunction with Bar Owners Association in coming up with protocols on their reopening.
I have also directed that the Ministry of Health, in conjunction with all bar owners, will develop self-regulating mechanisms as part of their civic responsibility to their clientele in order to allow their resumption.
The President also announced a review of the maximum number of persons permitted to attend weddings and funerals. 100 people will now be allowed to attend those social gatherings, up the 15 people allowed previously.
In accordance with the recommendations of the Interfaith Council, the maximum numbers of persons permitted to attend funerals and weddings is reviewed upwards from 15 to 100, with all in attendance abiding with the Ministry of Health protocols.
The importation and sale of second-hand clothes has also been reinstated.
That the ban on the sale of second-hand clothing, otherwise known in Kenya as mitumba, is herewith lifted.
President Kenyatta has further ordered for the gradual resumption of sporting events as an inclusive national consultative conference is expected to convene in 3 weeks to review the country's COVID-19 response. Zainab Mohammed, TV47.
Now, the Kenyan economy has grown by 4.6% amidst COVID-19 compared to 5.5% last year. President Uhuru Kenyatta says the inflation rate this year is lower at 4.4% compared to 6.3% last year, as Andrin Kilimi reports.
All set? All set. Your Grace, Chairman.
In his 11th address to the nation since the novel coronavirus was reported in the country, President Uhuru Kenyatta said the current economic indicators, despite being lower, have defied expectations.
When we look at our inflation numbers, they are lower today, standing at 4.4% compared to 6.3% during the same period last year. The current economic indicators, without doubt, are lower, but definitely far better than we ever anticipated.
Compared to the 5.5% last year, the Kenyan economy has grown by 4.6% amidst the coronavirus pandemic. The inflation stands at 4.4% compared to 6.3% during the same period last year. The head of state further affirmed efforts by Kenyans, especially those that have used the COVID-19 crisis, to reimagine their conditions. The banking sector, for instance, has begun to retool and humanize its model. Instead of focusing on profit, it has re-engineered its model to focus on the customer.
Institutions, for example, the Kenya Revenue Authority, have also remodeled their approach. As an example also, instead of destroying 1.5 million liters of illicit ethanol that was in their custody, working together with other government agencies like Kenya Pipeline and many others, they converted that illicit ethanol into hand sanitizers that were distributed freely throughout the length and breadth of our country.
President Kenyatta says the COVID-19 crisis represents both danger and an opportunity to Kenyans. Andrin Kilemi, TV 47.
Still on the president's address, it is not, or is now not a matter of if a referendum will take place or not, but when it will happen, with President Uhuru Kenyatta announcing that the time to change the constitution is now. President Uhuru Kenyatta said that the country needs a better document that conforms to future changes, as Mwangi Maina tells us.
The pronouncement by President Uhuru Kenyatta couldn't have come a better time than Wednesday, the eve of the 10th anniversary of the Constitution of Kenya of 2010.
We were made to adopt it with a promise that in the future we will make it better. 10 years later, the moment to improve on it, I believe, is now.
The president saying that 2010 constitution is a work in progress, and as such, it must be aligned to the needs of Kenyans as they arise. President Uhuru Kenyatta alluding to changes on matters elections.
The moment calls us to create a constitutional order that will long endure and survive and not be a conflict-stopping constitution, but rather a future-building document.
Uhuru calling on politicians and Kenyans not to be rigid on the polarities of the constitution, but embrace the changes for the common good of everybody. President Kenyatta says the constitution has been in conflict with the past, and this needs to be rectified for the sake of the posterity.
We must treat a constitution as a living being, as a living document that must constantly adjust to our emerging realities.
It is now evident that the country might go for a referendum before the 2022 polls. There has been constant calls for a referendum behind the shadows of the Building Bridges initiative. As President Uhuru Kenyatta speaks of a future, it is not evident who will benefit from the constitutional review between politicians and the Kenyan citizenry. Mwangi Maina, TV 47, Nairobi.
And the president equally ordered a probe into graft at the Kenya Medical Supplies Agency, KEMSA, to be completed within 21 days. The president ordered Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Directive of Criminal Investigations, that is the DCI, to hasten the probe, as Elizabeth Mutuku reports.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has ordered the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations (DCI) to complete investigations into the matter within 21 days.
Following the allegations of impropriety at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, better known as KEMSA, the relevant investigative agencies of our country are currently fully seized with the matter. However, given the compelling public interest on the matter. The relevant agencies should expedite their ongoing investigations and conclude the same within 21 days from the date hereof. Fellow Kenyans, in line with my stated public policy on zero tolerance to corruption, I want to once again reiterate that all persons found to be prima facie culpable as a result of those ongoing investigations should be brought to book.
His statement coming amidst claims of misappropriation of funds at the Kenya Medical Supplies Agency KEMSA. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukuru Yatani says no one will be spared if linked to the graft.
Of course, there could be doubts on what might have gone to KEMSA, but I leave it to the relevant agencies which already have started the process of investigation. Hopefully something will come out of it. And if there is any individual or group of people who have diverted resources meant for a calamity like this, they should not be spared, because they have no business being part of this noble society called Kenya. Taking advantage of a situation like this is not the desirable thing to do.
Members of Parliament are, however, questioning the funds meant for COVID-19 in the country. Budget Committee Chairman and Kieni Member of Parliament Kanini Kega claiming that some MPs have received the money meant to cushion Kenyans.
Occasion of even a question or a request, we should actually know how much money has already been spent and whether that money is what you call value for money.
KEMSA bosses have already been suspended in the ongoing investigations. Elizabeth Mutuku, TV47 Nairobi.
Mary Walingo and 4 others have been released on a 20 million shillings bond, each after denying corruption and abuse of office charges. They appeared before the Chief Magistrate, Elizabeth Usui, where they denied multiple corruption charges, among them abuse of office amounting to loss of 177 million shillings at the institution.
Ready for the clip?
Masai Mara University Vice-Chancellor Mary Walingo was charged alongside Simon Kasain and John Almadi, Antlet Biket and Nur Hassan. They are accused of conspiring to obtain the funds on diverse dates between January 2016 and July 2019, where Walingo is said to have directed the unlawful expenditure of the funds without following due process.
Mary Akoni Walingo, Simon Kasaine Oreseno, John Almadi Obere, Anakret Biket Okumu, Nuh Hassani Abdi, between 24 January 2016 and 19 July 2019 at Masai Mara University in Narok County, within Narok County, in the Republic of Kenya, being the Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellors, Finance Officer and Driver, conspired to commit an offense of corruption, namely misappropriation of public funds amounting to Kenya shillings 177 million.
Additionally, the 5 were charged with stealing by persons employed in the public service, where they are accused of stealing 177 million shillings by virtue of being employed at the institution, contrary to the law. Walingo was further accused of willful failure to comply with law relating to management of public funds by authorizing expenditure of 70 million shillings without supporting documents as required by law, leading to loss of funds. All the 5 were freed on a 20 million shillings bond, each without further terms.
Each accused person shall be released on bond of 20 million shillings with one surety of like amount or cash bail of 10 million shillings. Bond of 20 million with one surety of like amount or cash bail of 10 million.
The proceedings took place virtually, with the accused persons at Central Police Station in Nakuru and the Chief Magistrate at Nakuru Law Courts, in keeping with COVID-19 measures. The matter will be mentioned on September 11th.
Now, a new formula for sharing revenue among counties could be in place after the 12-member bipartisan Senate committee formed to broker a deal on the contentious formula announced a breakthrough. Now, the 12-member team made the announcement after 8 days of intense negotiations on the third basis for sharing revenue among the counties. The committee, however, reiterated that the standoff that has persisted in the Senate over the formula has not affected operations in the counties after the Treasury agreed to release up to 50% of the total allocations to the counties.
Tomorrow, the committee will be presenting its findings and outcome in a report form to the leadership of the House, led by the Speaker and the House leadership. We will not, and we are not allowed by standing orders of the House, to divulge the content of the report until it is presented to the Speaker and find its way to the House. But we want to assure Kenyans that the impasse that has been in the media and on everybody's lips is going to be something that will be resolved. Equally important, we have seen a circular from the Treasury that is very clear that counties are accessing 50% of their last year's allocation. So any stories from counties that are truncated and incapacitated and made difficult to work because the Senate has not passed the formula is not true. They are accessing money from the Treasury, and the Supreme Court ruled as such.
We'll update you on that as and when the report gets to the news desk. Now, at least 3 people have died after a quarry collapsed in Mudhara area, Juja in Kiambu County. 4 others are nursing serious injuries following the afternoon incident. Now, 2 of the quarry workers died on the spot, while the third one died while receiving treatment. Quarry workers are now calling on their employers to pay for their health insurance, with several such incidents reported in the area.
Mimi mwenye hii lori yenye imeangukiwa na mchanga kutoka huko juu kwa kware. Driver walikuwa na beba moyo na kulikuwa tani makaga wawili walikuwa wanapanga mawe kwa ndani. Wenye wamekufa ni driver na makaga wawili. Wengine waina wamepelekwa hospitali.
To David Ekidor, huwa nafanya kazi kwa Kware, lakini tangu nilikuja huku niliona huku mambo kama insurance hakuna, karatasi kama NSSF ambayo ukiumia inaweza kusaidia hakuna. Sasa unaona kama hii mambo imetokea hapa hivi, wenye walikuwa nafanya kazi hapa hivi watabidi wajitegemea wenyewe kwa wenyewe.
And to some bit of politics, and Deputy President William Ruto has downplayed political meetings held at Kotu boss Francis Atwoli's Kajiado home. Ruto says the meetings will not challenge his 2022 presidential ambitions, telling them as a waste of time. At least 5 political meetings have been held at Atwoli's home in the last 2 months, with talks of a coalition that will front a presidential candidate in 2022.
Ati siku hizi mko na wageni wengi sana kule Kajiado, kwa manyumba ya watu wengine huko. Msijali na hawa wanahangaika huko kwenu. Hiyo safari yote ni watu wanahangaika kwa sababu wamekosa mtu ya kushindana na mimi. Mahangaiko yote hiyo mnasikia huko Kajiado, mara wanaweka kwa gazeti wameungana sijui watu karibu 30. Na bado wanaona hii mlolongo ya watu 30 haijatosha. Bado wanatafuta wengine wa kuunganisha. Juzi waliniambia ati wako na kitu inaitwa system, na wako na ingine inaitwa deep state. Mimi nikamwambia sawa, na mimi niko na wananchi na Mungu, tukutane. Tukutane. Ama namna gani? Si namna hiyo? Namna hiyo. The line is drawn.
health services in Nairobi County are set to resume today after doctors' unions, Nairobi County Government and Nairobi Metropolitan Services agreed to settle demands that triggered a doctor's strike that kicked off 6 days ago. Alela reports with that story.
We have called off the strike now. We shall resume work immediately. And we shall offer Nairobian services as we have been offering them before.
After numerous meetings between doctors' unions, Nairobi Metropolitan Services and Nairobi County Government on how to end the doctor strike that had altered medical services in the city for the past 6 days, the three parties finally agreed on a return to work formula. Part of the deal being increment of salaries and promotion of doctors that will see more than 170 doctors promoted.
We've had doctors who have stagnated in one job group for over 16 years, 18 years, 12 years. Today, I'm happy to announce that all our doctors have been promoted and designated to their rightful job group. All. The other issue we had were issues of, we had 5 consultants who had not been paid for at least 26 months. Again, I'm happy to announce here today that Nairobi Metropolitan Services has undertaken to reinstate these officers and pay them their salaries in full starting the month of September.
The doctors have, however, urged the Nairobi Metropolitan Services and the county government to ensure they stick to the terms of the agreements and implement them effectively, failure to which they might resort to another industrial action.
Standing up for the rights and saying enough is enough. And I think this will be a lesson not only to Nairobi doctors, but all doctors at large. Because, as we're sitting here, let me tell you, in so many other counties, they are facing the same problems. Problems with promotions, problems with the designations, problem of late payments and everything. So, this will be a lesson to each and every doctor out there that they need to stand for their rights and demand for it.
The doctors in Nairobi public health facilities will resume duties full on Thursday. Eli Logova, TV47.
The Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, in collaboration with the Tea Directorate and University of Nairobi School of Art and Design, has rolled out a new program known as a Tea Enterprises Product Development and Branding Program aimed at boosting tea export potential in the country. Calvin Chito with the story.
Speaking during a visit to Mbogo Valley Tea Factory in Nandi County, Keproba CEO Wilfred Marube said that the agency is on a mission to engage tea sector players to create synergies and forge a working partnership in a bid to position and increase Kenya tea exports across the globe.
Helping them develop the product so that it meets both local and export market requirements, so that these products are able to be packaged well in terms of branding, so that they are appealing, so that they're also able to articulate and show that these are products coming from Kenya.
Marube noted that market diversification will ensure exporters do not over-rely on traditional export markets only. The planned activities include instructive training, validation workshops, and on-site coaching on tea export branding of 10 enterprises across Kericho, Nandi, Nyamira, and Bomet counties.
And access to international markets could start from the first position is in terms of information. What are the international market requirements if you are to sell tea directly, so that it's able to get into the distributorship, into the retail system? Because that is the best way forward to go.
The agency is engaging key players for several interventions, including subsidized cost of energy and general business environment, harmonization of the local restrictions, including levies and cess, to be payable once at a single point of departure.
For a very long time, farmers have not maximized in terms of tea being manufactured, all of it. You'll find out that years past, we have had a lot of green leaf being thrown away.
The agency is further targeting to improve infrastructure, including adoption of modern technology to improve productivity, as well as improve the channels of transport for easy and efficient delivery. Calvin Chitwa, TV47, Nandi County.
And that story by Calvin Chitwe takes us for a short break. We're coming back with a newspaper review. Steve Kijana will be joining me for the same after this break. time now that we take a look at the newspapers, still getting a hold of, or trying to get a hold of Steve Derry, but all the same we'll kickstart by updating you on what is captured on the front pages, especially those are the key stories. And as you can see, the Standard newspaper right here with me, trouble in paradise for the Obados and the Ngiritas, two families, one an epitome of power, the other known for NYS millions. And in the graft war, the governor's family is facing detectives while the Ngiritas have been ordered to forfeit fortune. This is a story that has been captured on page 2 and 3. This is what we were treated to yesterday, and also that conversation that started from the day before yesterday on the Mara haste, or the Masai Mara University haste. And of course, matters of corruption are still ongoing right here in the country in what many would argue is a positive direction. But the question is, but to what point? Because you see the likes of course, the individuals figured on the Masai Mara haste also have been awarded the bail and bond. While as much as it's a constitutional requirement, or it's a constitutional right, questions still linger as to whether it's the right place or the right thing to do in most cases, because you find that these people who are culpable on matters of corruption pay bills, pay bonds, and then they disappear, and you do not get to see, prosecutions, you do not get to see recovery of the assets that were lost. But that aside, it is expounded, like I have rightfully put it. These are developing stories. Will certainly be here to ensure that you are updated on the same. Also, one of the big stories that has taken center stage, or has taken part, or the better part of the stories in different newspapers too, is on the Uhuru set stage for referendum. President Uhuru Kenyatta maintains that it's important that as a country right now we proceed to make changes on the referendum, not wasting a crisis, yes, on eye of the 10th year anniversary since the new constitution was promulgated. President triggers a countdown to law change with declaration that now is the time for review. Captured on page 4, 6, 7, and 8, an extensive conversation, or an extensive capture of President Uhuru Kenyatta's address yesterday, looking at different issues that were captured on the same. And I have taken you through that based on the stories that were prepared by my very own team, including the revising of course, the measures that have been put aboard as to dealing with COVID-19 in the country. And yes, that is what is there. We'll be forming a basis of our discussion this morning as we get to know whether indeed it is time for us to proceed and have a referendum or not. And also, another story that has been captured here, we have a deal, say senators, or they say the senators, that is the committee that was set to deal with the issue of revenue sharing stalemate at the level of the counties, now officially declares that they have something for the people of the country. And we all await to see what it is that they will have brokered, and whether this will be received well by the rest of the senators and the country at large, the county governors, in regards to ensuring that money is equitably shared across the counties. Remember, it's been a stalemate that has gone on for the longest of time, with different sittings and numerous sittings. And of course, the question then is, how best are we able to deal with this and ensure that we are able to get, some level of equity across different parts of the country, as other senators argue that they have been marginalized for a long time, and, taking or giving them little money, or a little chunk of the money would be unfair, while others argue, it is time that they also get different proposals in regards to the same. They say that they've been giving so much to the country, and it is only fair that they get the fair share of what it is that they have provided or they have generated. So Steve Kijana is on standby this morning. Steve, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good to have you.
I'm also glad to join you. It's quite a bright Monday morning. I was having some network issues, but I'm now back.
Right on time, I'd say, because we're still on the first newspaper, and that is on the front page. What do you make of yesterday's address?
Well, first of all, maybe I can start with the coronavirus view of it. Is that it was quite an address that touched on key issues, but with the reopening of the Mitumbas, however, the restaurants and the bar owners must not have been very excited with the continued closure of those bars and nightclubs. I don't think that bars and nightclubs were such a danger, but that shows that the government still believes that those social places are where the spreading of the virus was quite high. However, we've heard him really speak about the Constitution. The last time, I think it was on a national celebration when he spoke of a constitutional moment. And he came back and repeated that we must not continue to suffer in a spirit of constitutional rigidity, that it is not rigid and can be changed. So he has continuously changed tone on quite a certain level. You remember the first time the ODM party leader spoke of constitutional changes. He was vehemently against that, but he has continued embracing that fact. And that tells you that whatever Raila Odinga has been saying, that the referendum is mandatory, it must come soon, then that tells you that he is also trying to bring forward the agenda that the referendum is basically going to happen. And of course, we've had many people think of the referendum as an expensive affair. And the Raila Odinga thinks that it's not an expensive affair, because we've seen countries like UK go to elections twice in a year, or even thrice. They have so many elections in a year, depending on the issues that emerge. So I think if what the president said, going by what he said, we expect maybe a referendum in the coming months, and he definitely wants to also have a constitutional moment, just like Kibaki did, to undo the wrongs that were done by the 2010 constitution, or to make improvements that were promised back then. He believes that he is the one who is going to do that.
All right, as we drop that one, trouble in paradise for Bardos and Giritas. You saw what happened yesterday, and also, yes, that is a key figure, and a couple of other individuals on the Mara haste. And looks like, the DPP, the DCI investigative bodies are at it and determined to ensure that indeed they are able to win this fight on matters corruption. What do you make of this and the fact that, yes, some of them equally enjoyed their constitutional right of being awarded bonds and bails?
Well, first of all, with the current coronavirus status and state of our prisons, I think bail and bond also being a right under the Constitution was definitely, it did not really surprise me. Having been to courts, bail and bonds are rights that are deserving to every Kenyan citizen. Actually, what happens is that the lowly Kenyans, the common Mwananchi, is actually the one who has been denied bond. But it is his right. It is a right for every offender or every suspect, whether it's a criminal or a death or a murder suspect. They all deserve bail, unless there are reasons that are very demanding that can make him or her denied. But now, moving away from the issue of bond, it shows that the issue of Kenyans protesting against corruption is something that was quite important. I see this as a diversionary tactic to divert the attention of citizens of the loss of COVID-19 funds, and to tell Kenyans, hey, we are also fighting corruption in other areas. We are fighting the Mara haste, we are fighting the Obados, but I think that was quite to divert the attention, because Kenyans have been really focused on the money that has been lost through COVID-19 funds. But now, I think the DPP, if you look at those cases, the Mara haste came up 1 year ago. They have taken one whole year to investigate, yet that was an issue where accounting evidence was so clear. I think the Obado issue was also something that has been a work in progress. So for them to have identified this moment to release that, then I think it was also quite an opportunity for them to divert that. However, I have always said that the fight against corruption, this is what we always need to see. But of course, Kenyans are used to this arrest, the Kamata Fridays, you remember them. they were quite something that Kenyans have gotten used to. And what Kenyans want, it's the arrest and conviction of big fish. They want to see the big fish sentenced to prison and made to pay fines like what we saw the Waluke case do. But unfortunately, the Waluke case, you remember, it was a case that was of over quite some 7 years ago. But Kenyans now want these emerging issues. Like what we saw in Somalia, it was of corruption cases that were recent. We want to see these recent corruption cases that have been there during the tenure of President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President Ruto. Those are the individuals, the big fish that we want arrested and convicted. Mm-hmm. However, we Kenyans still do not have that feeling of confidence. I think we have seen the issue of Ubado has been spoken about for so long, but we never saw anything materialize. I think it is time that the DPP now proceeds in that direction. I think I really commend him for that, but it is time they come up with strong evidence that can inspire convictions in court, because the judges, as Maraga has always said, are always ready to join the fight against corruption. But if you present loose evidence, they'll definitely not jail anyone. So I think it's a good move, and I think Obado has really been he's always able to evade some of these things through, of course, probably he has always gotten sanitized, as people call it, severally. I would want to see if this time he is going to escape it.
Right. Okay. Well, that's when we equally expound some more later on the broadcast, that is on the current affairs segment. And yes, it looks like there's a sigh of relief, and the 12-member committee officially declares that we have a deal.
Well, I think finally, after 9 sittings and of the Senate, and of course several sittings of the special committee, I think it took them too long to reach an agreement. And of course, I heard Sakaja trying to say that they are not the cause as to why counties are not receiving money. But of course, I think so, because last time I said that CS Ukuri Atani had also kind of given this committee some departure after the committee was requesting for an extra 9 billion worth of allocation for counties so that they could be able to find a formula that would fit in this situation. I think there has been a little goodwill by the CS for Treasury in terms of disbursing money. I think he has always been having meetings with the CRA chair, with the senators, and trying to say that they need solutions. So I think, first of all, the Senate, the Senate committee rightfully said it, that they were not the barrier as to why counties were not receiving money, because there is that provision that 50% can be disbursed pending the determination of the formula. But I think it's a great thing. Senator Changula said that they are going to present that in a report form to the Senate today. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing that report. And at the end of the day, I think for both parties to have agreed, I think then a win-win formula, as the Deputy President probably was saying, and other Kenyans had supported, is what we have now ended with. And I think it is a good show that Kenyans can come from different sectors, come together and agree that this is how we need to divide revenue, because every Kenyan in this country is an equal citizen. And I think session number 10 of 1965 was quite an unfortunate paper because it came under the guise of African socialism, but it was not a socialist paper. What that paper did was to come and divide Kenyans by saying that we should invest our money where it will bring the highest returns. And that is why you saw areas like Central Kenya being highly invested for the past years after independence. And that really brought a lot of ethnic fracturing in our country. And I think that is now something we need to solve through devolution by bringing an amount of money and taking money to counties in a way that is going to cajole and bring the other counties that have been marginalized for years to the same level as those countries that have always been developed. I think for some years before, if you went to northern Kenya, you could not find a single paved road or a tarmacked or even marrammed road. But now with devolution, we are in a position where we can get tarmacked roads. We can get boreholes dug for those people. I think everyone in Kenya deserves development, regardless of your population, because you did not choose to occupy a certain section of this country. You found yourself there. And therefore, I think we need to stop using this issue of numbers to really marginalize people. And I think looking at the composition of that committee, it had senators from all sectors of Kenya. And I think it is a great show of leadership, especially by the chair, Moses Wetangula, that they can come together and find a solution for the country. And I think this is what probably should have happened long ago. We shouldn't have had to wait for 9 sittings, because this has put Kenya in a state of divide. And it has also given politicians, the 9 sittings in that long time, it has given politicians a lot of time to drive various narratives. Like the Kikuyu, the central Kenya Kikuyus have driven that narrative of everyone is against you. I think those are very divisive narratives that should not have gotten there. But I think it's going to be a great thing. I'm looking forward to see the report. And I hope that report is something that is going to be agreed upon by the Senate. And I think it will reunite a divided Kenya that has been created for a few weeks.
Okay, well, equally we expound some more on that, and we course over to a different story. There's a story that is here that is interesting, but I'm sure it's on the other papers. Let's take a look at the Daily Nation front page. And graft family losses looted NYS riches. I think that is something that we've talked about. President Uhuru Kenyatta relaxes rules on alcohol and gatherings. We've also talked about that. But there's an interesting political story right here. Kalonzo Lone Ranger, Wiper leader, slowly becoming a general without troops. What do you make about, what do you make of the politics of Ukambani as it stands right now? The other day you saw them, of course, with Johnson Muthama. And Muthama calling upon, Kalonzo Musyoka to cross over to the other side and support Deputy President William Ruto. I just don't know what you make about this, which is also a conversation that we'll be having later on.
Well, I think Kalonzo Musyoka has been a presidential candidate in Ukambani, and for quite some time. I think the Ukambani people have for long supported him, and he has always come out and outgrown the kind of opposition he receives. It is not the first time he is getting competition or rather opposition from his region as being the kingpin. I think a few months ago you saw the 3 main governors, Kivuga Kibwana, Charity Ngilu, and Mutua, coming together to kind of speak development and declare that Kalonzo has denied them that development, and therefore they are coming together to give that region the development they lacked for years. And that wave went for some time, and after that Kalonzo still managed to come back and take back the perception that he is still the king of the region. And this is quite a blow, because those people are people who are just politicians in that region, and they were not his right-hand men. I think it is like if today William Ruto lost the likes of Burkomen and Sudi. I think now we have seen him lose Muthama. Muthama has for long been his closest general. Right. He has been that who speaks, and when he speaks, we know he is speaking what Kalonzo's voice is. I think it is quite unfortunate for Kalonzo Musyoka, and he is quite a deserted man, and I am looking to see how he is going to manage to come back. I think it's not the first time Muthama is departing from him. You saw in the NASA time, Muthama was actually campaigning for Alela to be the presidential candidate for NASA. Yeah. I think it probably does not shock him to get betrayals. He is kind of used to these betrayals in politics, but that is why probably he has decided to hide himself in the Uhuru side. And I think he must have gotten quite a promise of a serious post, because he has been quite loyal. He has been quite loyal to the agreement he had with the Jubilee Party and the president. And probably, whether deserted or not, I think Kalonzo Musyoka, if the BBI agenda goes as it is, I think Kalonzo Musyoka is headed for something. But you see, there is also an issue of him still wanting to be a presidential candidate and saying that Raila promised that he is going to support him this time, and Raila saying he does not want to speak about it. So I think he is quite a deserted person, and I think whether or not he could still be able to maneuver, I think he needs a general like Budhama or like Wavinya Ndeti, who now cannot be doing politics since she is now a CAS in government. But I think every politician needs a general who, when he speaks, you don't have to speak, and that general can speak, and the people can know that is your voice. And I think now Kalonzo lacks that, and that will be quite harmful to his leadership in that region.
Well, Kalonzo says that Mudhama directed him to Baba, they didn't get anything, directed him to a couple of other directions where they did not get everything. What makes him think that if he's going to direct him to the DP, there's going to be something? Of course, we have someone in studio who's going to be answering that. Honorable Boni Khalwale joins us this morning after this particular session. Steve, thank you so much for the great insights. We're not going to go through the People's Daily. There's still so much, but then again, same stories that we'll be deliberating on later. That is on the current affairs segment after this short break. Once again, Steve, asante sana.
Asante sana. Have a blessed day.
You too. Thank you. and Honorable Boni Khalwale is right here. Honorable Dr. Boni Khalwale, former Kakamega Senator, is with us this morning to expound some more on the political events of the country, or equally, current affairs. There's so much to expound on. I only hope that time would allow us to touch on these key issues that are there. So welcome on board once again. I invite you to be part and parcel of this conversation. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela TV47KE. The SMS short code is right there running down on your screen, and equally the numbers to call. We'd be glad to hear what you have to say and the questions that you have for Mheshimiwa, because I'm almost certain that you could be having numerous questions in regards to his previous utterances, or the utterances that has been or that have been there on the public domain. Mheshimiwa, before I went on break, first of all, let me invite you again officially. Thank you so much for finding time to be here with us this morning. And before we went for the first break, the argument was that Johnson Budama has joined the side of DP. We know very well that you are an ally 101% as it stands. And he calls upon Kalonzo Musyoka to equally cross over to this other side. Is there anything for Kalonzo on this other side?
Yes, because that is where the country is.
Oh, yeah?
If that is where the country is, surely there should be room for everybody. It'd be wrong if indeed the deputy president wants to be the president of Kenya, and yet he is not prepared to serve everybody, Kalonzo included. Yes.
All right, so in this case then, that's a polite way of answering that one, or a tricky way of answering that one. When you say the country is there, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the 40-something million Kenyans, or what?
We are talking about, in democracy, you talk about the majority.
The balance of the majority.
The majority.
So the majority is on
the
other side.
Country.
Well, we'll get to that politics later on as we proceed. But importantly, I think it's only fair that we start off with President Uhuru Kenyatta's address yesterday. And this particular one that is probably of interest to many Kenyans as to the KEMSA scandal that is ongoing, or the KEMSA scandal that has been ongoing. President Uhuru Kenyatta gives an ultimatum of 21 days for us to get answers. Just how genuine is that?
It's not too clear, because so far the factors at play look like, because we all have family, we all belong to family, and we value family very highly. So his family in this matter is a family of interest.
Okay.
So pronouncement coming from the head of a family of interest in this serious scandal, it will be difficult for us to differentiate the statement of Uhuru, the president, and statement of Uhuru, the head of the family, which is a family of interest in this matter.
Just how much confidence do you have that indeed, yes, this is a family of interest in this matter? Well, aside from what has been out there on the public domain.
Because it is black and white.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yes.
Expound further.
If it was not the case, we would be expecting that in the last, 7-8 obtaining days from the time the expose came up, that would have seen court action. There's been none. Yeah.
Well, the president has been categorical that, you know what, he's out there to ensure that he fights corruption, and he's not going to care whether it's going to be about family or whoever. Everyone that is going to be mentioned on the same and found culpable will be implicated. There's no question about it. What makes you doubt the president's utterances?
I doubt him a lot, because he has had an opportunity to demonstrate that he is committed to fighting corruption, up to and including the cases of the scandal of National Youth Service, where the governor of Kirinyaga was involved. The indications are that the government has not spared any opportunity to defend the governor, up to and including the recent fiasco in Senate, when Kenyans were being told that an impeachment process was going on, when there was none. Instead, it was
Are you trying to say that indeed the Senate's decision was compromised? Or?
Oh, it was terrible. Ask anybody, including this studio, all the people who come here. Let them be casting a vote before they leave.
Why should this be about the president?
For the reason that the president was the real driver of the National Youth Service Program.
Okay.
Yeah. And at that time, when it was going on, he clearly made Waiguru to look like she was the face of that project. So it is a question of putting 2 and 2 together and getting 4.
Yes. At the Senate, it wasn't about the NYS saga, it was about Kirinyaga County.
Well, I'm just speaking widely.
All right.
But if I was to be specific,
trying to inform why it is that the president would have been come into this.
Yes. But if I was to be specific, I would go the route you're saying. We are therefore saying that that is a big opportunity that the president has had, but he has not taken action.
Okay, isn't it the right direction to equally go the way that Right Honorable Raila Odinga is proposing, that there needs to be an audit conducted on the same before we start pointing fingers at other? Technically, what President Uhuru Kenyatta says that there is need that the investigative agencies take up with this matter, with the urgency that it deserves. Why is it then that we're incriminating even before it gets to that point where we get tangible evidence, or a tangible case? As many would have argued, or as the courts would have argued, it's been hard for them to deliberate on these issues because there is no tangible evidence that has been presented to them.
Yes, we've all had Raila, and some people are surprised.
Yeah.
But those of us who are in the arena of playing politics, we know that Raila knows exactly what he's doing.
Okay.
For the reason that, again, just like Uhuru's family has become a family of interest in this scandal, so has Raila's party, and the top leadership of that party also become players of interest.
Okay.
Yes, based on the evidence which is there. Leaders, including myself, have made pronouncements on this matter, and therefore, for Raila to try to be the lead person in giving advice on how it should go, again, just like in President Uhuru's case, we doubt him because of that interest. Now, why Kenyans should not allow Raila to get away with that proposal is because if indeed he's a man of his corner is a corner of interest, who is the chairman of Public Accounts Committee?
Okay.
The chairman of Public Accounts Committee is Honorable Apio and I, an official of the Orange Democratic Movement, and a relative of Raila.
Okay. So these people will be going to answer to them, which we probably would not.
So what will be the quality of oversight?
Oversight, yeah.
When that matter comes out.
Okay.
Secondly, the other committee in Parliament that would have to have a say on this matter would be the Committee on Finance. Who is the chair of the Committee of Finance? It's Gladys Wanga. Yeah. So Kenyans are not children to be treated to the big man syndrome of saying that my name is Honorable Raila Odinga, you know my CV, and therefore I say that all of you shall follow what I'm proposing. We are saying we don't want to listen to him. On this matter, we would ask Honorable Raila Odinga to keep quiet.
If he keeps quiet, then who should speak? And what should they say if at all we are to achieve any results?
He should speak if he's one of the suspects and say that I'm sorry if anybody thinks that I'm the one, I am not the one. He is not the DPP. He is not the DCI. He is not the Inspector of Police. He is not the President, and therefore we don't want him to advise us. But if he feels that somebody is pointing a finger at him, he's free to say, I am not the one.
He is Kenyan before he is Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Constitutionally we are allowed to come out and, of course, equally weigh in our sentiments on issues that affect us directly. So I would want to assume that he is speaking on a capacity of being Kenyan as opposed to being a leader.
That kind of statement, because of the cloud that he carries around with him, he can easily amount to intimidation of the investigatory departments of this country. Especially when we know that in Kenya today, there is a lot of impunity. We are having cases when people are in public offices are being punished for a good day's work. We have got the examples of Senator Murkomen, Senator Susan Kihiga. They have lost positions because they have decided to stand with the truth, to stand with the people.
If you were on another side of course, a different party, would you be saying the same thing?
Precisely.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. I owe it to myself that I remain on the same trajectory that I've been from the time I entered into public service. And mine has been very clear that despite having an opportunity to steal, I have managed not to steal, and I have managed to carve for myself a niche whereby if you ask 10 Kenyans, 7 out of 10 will say Khalwale fights corruption.
How do we not have good structures? When you speak of the fact that there's been an opportunity for you to steal, what does it speak of our system? What does it speak of the structures that we have? What does it speak? Does it present a picture where we all assume that there are a lot of loopholes that are left open, so that in as much as maybe we might be fighting graft, we probably need to go back to the root cause?
If you ask me, and I think you are, there's nothing wrong with the structures. The laws are there, the constitution is there, they are very specific about matters of fighting corruption and integrity. In fact, we have reserved an entire chapter in the constitution, chapter 6, on matters of integrity and leadership. So it's not the structure. The structure is that we have institutionalized impunity completely. That people just think they can get away with anything. I mean, if you go on the streets where I've been driving when I was coming to the studio, and you ask the Askaris, who by the way are very highly educated people, but only because there are no job opportunities in this country, they have to take food home. They know. They even know who took money. They even know when it was taken and all that.
But is it not what the president was saying, that if you know who has done this, you know where to go? Karura, you take that direction and go to the DPP, go to the DCI, go and report some of these issues. With this kind of knowledge, why is it that we take our fights to the social media? How healthy is that towards us, attaining or winning this fight?
It is because people are frustrated. They know that even if you take that information to the so-called the people in those institutions, no action is taken. Or, if anything, the knowledge you give them gives them an opportunity to best prepare on how to sanitize themselves. So the president cannot be asking Kenyans to go and report to the DCI. He has got an entire state machinery that costs the taxpayer billions of shillings for doing that work of investigation.
Deputy President William Ruto is part and parcel of the presidency.
Yes.
And what capacity does it have to speak on this particular matter of graft as a leader?
I want to confirm that I'm aware of that purely because of the letter and spirit of the Constitution, that he is a member of the presidency. To go beyond that is now for me to attempt to speak to the working chemistry between the two of them. I'm not in that position.
But have they presented that to the public domain, their working relationship as it stands? So probably as Kenyans we can deliberate on the same.
Personally, I believe it's laughable that you would have a deputy who is as talented as William Ruto, and you have a constitution that gives you the kind of latitude it does, and then you don't want him to enjoy leg room to perform.
Is it obvious that the president does not want him to do that, or it's probably him who's just decided to take a back seat?
I think you're in a better position to tell.
Well, you tell us, Bushimiwa, because you have been in this game for the longest of time.
As they say in soccer, and I know you love soccer.
Well, I do.
You come from a soccer community.
I do.
It is the spectators who are best placed.
I am in a position to say that, but again, not while I'm on set. So this one curtails me. The environment is that now curtails me. So we can only allow you to weigh in your sentiment as a spectator.
Yeah, but because I live in this country, I know that all is not well. Yeah, we would like to see our deputy president working in the robust manner he used to do in the first term of the Uhuru presidency. Yeah.
Allegations of corruption have been made or have been leveled against the DP, or so to speak, his allies. Would you suppose the counter that we are seeing today is probably not a genuine counter towards addressing the issues of the common mwananchi, but a tit-for-tat affair that, you know what, you pointed fingers at us at some point in time. Now it is time for us to point fingers at you.
The allegations against the deputy president are made by cowards. If they were being made by men and women of character, they would be doing what some of us did when we cast aspersions.
You've made such allegations while you were in NASA.
Yes, I'm going there.
Okay.
That's where I was going.
All right.
If they were men and women of character, they would have done what some of us did. When we cast aspersions against the deputy president, we did something about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You realized
I
that.
took a motion and moved the Parliament of Kenya to make a decision on the deputy president. And it is in the public domain that I lost.
Yes, you did. Why do you suppose you lost because genuinely he was a credible man, or you lost because, again...
He put up a defense.
Right.
I prosecuted the case. And on the weight of evidence, Parliament decided to lean with him.
Right.
Even if I was unhappy because I had lost my motion, he proved his innocence at that stage.
Yeah.
What has stopped all these people, including people like James Orengo, who are experienced politicians like me, who are senior counsels in the practice of law, what has stopped them from doing something about it the way I did?
All right.
So I either call them coward or people who are just peddling propaganda. Yes.
Or is it just the system that you just talked about,
And then
the fact that, you know what, in as much as you go and blow the whistle, nothing much can be done?
I don't believe in the word system.
Well, not system in this case, the system that we talk about, but
Yes.
technically, yes, the systems at large that you're referring to. You say that, you know, sometimes Kenyans are tired because they know in as much as they're going to present this, they will also blow. Nothing really might happen.
I'll tell you, when you are talking about that kind of system, I thought you were talking about
the other system
as in deep state.
No deep state.
If you mean that system, what it confirms to me is that the reason why knowledgeable people like Orengo are not taking action,
Right.
either to impeach the deputy president or actually get him sued so that he is jailed, it is because they are merely driving a political narrative, hoping that they can use the narrative of a corrupt man to use the language of young people so as to reduce the bonga points of the deputy president politically. Otherwise, if they had impeccable issues to speak to,
Right.
they have a wonderful opportunity to use it to nail the guy.
Well,
Yeah.
these conversations are still in court, so probably we should leave them at that as we await to see whether the 21 days that President Uhuru Kenyatta has declared are going to yield.
Are we interested parties in court?
Oh, well, no.
No, we are not interested
So
parties.
we're allowed to be interested parties outside.
Outside, we can be able to comment on what's going on in that court. I mean, it's only if we are interested parties.
Amicus curiae, where are we? And not. And now let's cross over to this conversation, culminating from yesterday's address by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And first, let's pick this story and come back, react on the same. That is on a referendum, state of a referendum. All right, as we try and get a hold of that, yes, President Uhuru Kenyatta declares that a referendum is inevitable, of course backed by Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who says reggae in eco break. We'll be right back with reggae. 2010 Constitution is 10 years old. Promulgation conducted 27th day. A day like this, what do you make of it so far?
Oh, it's a wonderful 10 years that they have been.
Why wonderful?
Because we know what Kenya was without the Constitution 2010. It's far much better. Because of courtesy of the old Constitution, today I'm sure there would be a lot of people serving in detention.
Right.
So the new Constitution has given us a Bill of Rights, that we are enjoying freedoms that are unprecedented. Number two, we are enjoying freedoms that are not enjoyed by many third world country members. The new Constitution has given us the structure of devolution, and it is changing villages. We know it could be better, but it is better than when it was not there.
Okay.
The current Constitution has given us a judiciary that now has teeth. We know that the judiciary is not doing very well, but it's not because of the structure of the Constitution, but because of the impunity. There are players who want to go and interfere with the work of the judiciary. We know that, for example, thanks to the new Constitution, we have a bicameral parliament, and in the process, legislation oversight is better structured, can be better done. But again, the failures we might be having is because of impunity, whereby the executive is breaching the principle of separation of powers.
Yeah.
So they go into areas where they should not be going. So we are happy that the new constitution is there for that and many other reasons.
10 years into it, and the conversation has changed.
Yes.
That probably there are very many loopholes into this constitution. There needs to be some amendment, and we acknowledge the dynamism of constitutions across the globe. And in this case, then we are allowed to probably have a conversation, charting the way forward towards amending the constitution. One. This talk of a BBI or this talk of change of the constitution at this point when we all acknowledge that we've not even been able to implement quarter of the constitution that we have today, is it a wise move?
I leave it up to Kenyans to decide whether it is a wise move or not. But I will say my piece.
Yes.
My piece is as follows. Do we want to change the constitution simply because it is 10 years old? If so, where in the constitution is it written that this constitution shall stand to be amended 10 years after promulgation?
Okay.
It's not there. So that is a wrong premise, that it is 10 years and therefore we must change. It's rubbish. Two, do we want to change the constitution because President Uhuru feels and thinks that is a constitutional moment? Where in the constitution is written that when the serving president feels that is a constitutional moment, then the country should change the constitution? It's not there. And therefore that statement by Uhuru should be treated as a private citizen's statement and not the President of the Republic of Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be treated as that. Three, do we want to amend it because Alela and an animal called BBI handshake are saying that we must change the constitution? Again, the answer is the same. It is not there in the constitution that there shall come a powerful man with a rich history of being active in politics, and whenever he wishes that the constitution should be changed, then it should be done. It is not there. We want to change the constitution when we are properly moved. You can move the constitution properly through the provisions of the same constitution, Article 256. You can move it. You can move the country.
Do you feel like we are at that time?
The Article 257, you can move the country.
Yeah.
We are not that stage. I am looking for three things which we must sort out before we move the country.
All right.
The first one is what the constitution, the Committee of Parliament is speaking to, creating a law that should govern referenda.
Yeah.
So we need a referendum law.
Okay.
I want to compliment Honorable Kioni.
That one by Kioni, yes.
Yes, I want to compliment him and his committee.
Bill.
They are thinking in the right direction.
Right.
The second thing we need is to get an advisory opinion from the Supreme Court.
Okay.
The Supreme Court should tell this country whether the Constitution can be amended for the sake of amending it.
Okay.
And if it cannot be amended for the sake of amending it the way Alela wants, the way President Uhuru wants, then they should tell us what are the criteria that must be observed before you attempt to amend the Constitution.
Hold it right there, Mheshimiwa.
Because I'm sounding theoretical,
yes,
allow me to be clearer to the listeners and viewers. There are certain chapters in that Constitution which I have read and understood that to me would never ever at any time be changed.
Okay.
The chapter on the Republic. Can you amend the Republic of Kenya so that you change the boundaries of Kenya between Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Somalia, and so on? Certainly not. So even if somebody came with 100% majority in Parliament, or somebody came up with 1 million signatures, which you can get, by the way, on the boundary. Because if, for example, with due respect, the Luhyas of Kenya decided that they want to be counted with the Luhyas of Uganda to be on the same side, they can give you 7 million signatures and they say Luhyas want to go to Uganda.
Right.
Would you allow them? You can't. No. So that amendment is not admissible.
Okay.
2, supposing you got 1 million signatures, or the whole parliament decided that you want to change the Bill of Rights, would you allow amendment of a constitution where you take away the rights of Kenyans?
No.
For example, if somebody says, we now want to remove the right to life.
You cannot.
You cannot. Number 3, these are practical, serious issues. On the issue being peddled by President Uhuru and Raila, the issue of the chapter on the executive. Are we sure you can admit an amendment of the executive? You can't. Do you know why? If you do, it therefore means if Uhuru and Raila feel that their families are so special, and I know they do, that's why they are mistreating us the way they are mistreating us, they can very easily move the country using their clout and wealth to provide that we move Kenya, the executive, the chapter of the executive, to move away from presidential system to a monarchy, so that their 2 families can be the ones ruling this country in perpetuity.
Okay.
So the Supreme Court, we want them to tell us whether those chapters that I've referred to and many others maybe can actually be amended. And therefore, if they cannot be amended, Alela, if they cannot be amended, it therefore means that there is a basic structure of the Constitution that you cannot touch.
Okay.
So that determination, until it is made, this kelele and manenos will always come up.
But we saw very many leaders in Bomas, and to what we saw for a moment, it's like it was an endorsement of what it is that the BBI would present. Was it hypocritical? Why didn't we have these conversations even before that actual date of the presentation by the by the task force?
I thank God that I've been around for a while. What I saw in Bomas, that was not the first time Kenyans were going to Bomas.
Yes.
We had asked the delegates who went to Bomas in 2005 that came up with the famous Bomas draft that this country shall forever miss. The identification of that list of delegates who went to Bomas, there was a process. But the people who came to Bomas the other day, Bomas 2, let me call it Bomas 2,
okay.
It was a choreographed gathering whereby county commissioners, sub-county commissioners, chiefs, assistant chiefs, cherry-picked from wherever they work, people who would come, people then who came to cheer on. That is why you saw whenever anybody came up with a contrary opinion, they were being booed. It was a shameful gathering that we had in Bomas on that day.
You are a leader, and we have numerous other powerful leaders that Kenyans look up to ensure that, some of these issues are not forced down our throats. Some of these issues are not bulldozed on us. But you're the very same leaders who are crying foul. What picture does it paint to the common mwananchi who looks up to you to get representation?
I'm glad that we are now in the digital era where Kenyans can directly and almost in real time engage you. Like if I was to open my phone now, Kenyans are engaging me as I'm on this studio. I take a lot of comfort from the fact that Kenyans speak to where I'm headed. Kenyans speak to the pronouncements I make, positively and negatively. It keeps on steering your compass accordingly. I want to confirm to you, if what we are doing, we might look small and not in public office and so on.
Okay.
If we stop it, there can be a dictatorship in this country.
Right.
If we stop it, we can completely find ourselves with a document mutilated to the extent that we are not talking about an amended constitution, but a new constitution.
If in office, would you have addressed this with the same vigor?
If I was?
If in office.
Oh, sure. I mean, that is my history. And you know it. You're old enough to know how I've been practicing my politics.
Right.
Yes. So we are taking pride from the fact that we have kept the course. And we want to thank the president. The president has never intimidated me for the views that I take.
Right.
Save, of course, when I was in NASA. When I was in NASA is when they attempted to deal with me.
Right.
But that is for another day. Yeah.
Okay, well, so much to speak about, but I think it's only fair that we pay some bills here.
You do?
Briefly, we pay some bills. We take a short break, and then we come back to expound some more on other issues that are of importance to the common mwananchi right here, as we chart the way forward on the issues of governance right here in the country. So let's take that short break, and we'll be right back with Honorable Boni Khalwale.
Thank you.
All right, as we are now back, Mheshimiwa, we're back again. Yes, that was pretty fast, yeah? And we expand some more. Actually, importantly, that we invite you to be part of the discussion. Remember, you can as well call live, and we get answers in regards to the same. There is some question coming here from one Wafula Jones. Says, what happened for him to change the tune after bashing Ruto for a very long time? Does it mean he's also enjoying the looted money, or so to speak? And yes, he says Mheshimiwa is very clever on his approach on matters constitution. All right.
Wafula.
Yes.
You want me to respond?
Yes.
Wafula, it must be very clear to all of us that politics, just like life, is dynamic. Nothing is permanent. Yeah. So because of the very dynamism of politics, you are interacting with person X today, person Y tomorrow,
right,
and so on and so forth. Secondly, the more you interact with people, the more you get to the bottom of the issues that either you are misunderstanding or the issues that were keeping you apart. Now, why am I working with William Ruto? We have a shared vision. The vision Ruto has. It doesn't matter if you have evidence that he's a thief. It doesn't matter whether you have evidence that he's a bad man, a terrible person. But there is a vision he has, which I share with him.
Let's take this example, Mheshimiwa, and go a little bit on the larger bit. Just allow me to ask this. It's in relation to the same, yeah?
Okay.
We look at the likes of Zimbabwe. And we've seen leaders who've worked with Mugabe. And many argue that, even upon the exit of Mugabe, getting a person who worked with Mugabe would probably not do anything good for the country. Yes. But others argued, no, Mugabe was more of a person who was running the show on his own. So the likes of Mnangagwa coming in would probably have now the confidence to work on their very own vision that, would have changed the country. But such is not what we witness today in Zimbabwe. One would argue that Deputy President William Ruto is part and parcel of the government, working with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Why is it that he's not being able to execute this vision at this time for the betterment of the country? And what makes you think that when he is there or is going it alone without President Uhuru Kenyatta or any other person, then it's going to be a different affair?
Huge. So I'll answer it in two sentences.
Yeah.
The first one is Wafula. I was telling you the issue of a shared vision.
Yeah.
Look, it is now clear that according to the president and according to the former prime minister, Kenya will develop very fast if we afford the two of them, by dint of the fact that they come from the founding families of the republic, an opportunity to continue in leadership. Some people call it the dynasties. Ruto and I, and many like-minded Kenyans, we are saying we want a country where the children of this country, including if God blesses you with children in the future, can enjoy equal access to opportunity.
All right, yes.
We want our children to enjoy equal access to opportunity, period. So that my son can compete with the son of the sugarcane cutter of Kakamega. That's where I converge with Ruto, and we will continue moving in that direction.
Is it so hard to start the processes right now?
We are on it. This is why we are together.
All right.
Now, to answer you on the case of Zimbabwe, I'll answer it by giving you the example of Kenya. Our youth might not be too much in the know about Zimbabwe. Once upon a time in this country, President Moi had a vice president called Mwai Kibaki. And President Moi ran down the economy of this country to the extent that literally nothing was moving. And Kibaki was his vice president of 8 years plus. So had you ridden off Kibaki, that because he had been in the same office with Moi, he would mess the country even more, we would have missed out on the 10 years of Kibaki, which up to date, if you ask me, of the 4 presidents that we have had, Kibaki stands out as the best performer. So if Kibaki performed from a terrible presidency like that one of Moi, I have no doubt that given an opportunity, President Ruto will improve on what Uhuru has achieved.
Well, one would argue this way, Mheshimiwa, that, sometimes when it comes to gauging, so you see when people have performed terribly, like the comparison, let's take the comparison that used to be there, that many argue, when you look at Nairobi with Sonko and Nairobi with Kidero probably did not do so much justice for it. So one would look at what it is that Sonko is doing and probably say, well, he's probably done better, but still not up to standards. So in this case, while we might argue that, yes, maybe President Kibaki did justice to the country in terms of change, he could have done more. In the event that you do not take this, in the event that there's no likelihood of, garnering this, what happens to this dream?
Because you brought in the issue of Sonko, if I don't comment, I'll not be doing justice to the viewers. Sonko had 2 challenges, which were monumental.
All right.
The first one is intrinsic. The guy does not have good access to education. You need good education to run public office. Nobody should apologize.
No 2 ways to
that. Nobody should apologize. I mean, you cannot ask a matatu driver to fly a Boeing 747 Dreamliner. You can't. So you need good education to be in public office if that office is going to deliver. He had that challenge. The second challenge, and for which I sympathize, is that Sonko worked under very difficult circumstances. There are players in Nairobi who believe that governors of Nairobi should be from particular areas, from particular ethnic backgrounds, which was not shared by Sonko. So from day one, they were frustrating Sonko. From day one, they were salivating for Sonko's
But
office.
who are these? Because my assumption is that Jubilee wanted office, and through Sonko, Jubilee got the office. Well, they wanted to get it from Kidero because they felt like
they were so desperate for the office,
yes,
that they would use anybody or anything to get it. So when they used Sonko, because Sonko was an extremely popular politician in Nairobi, he got more votes in Nairobi than President Uhuru. They used him, and now they wanted to dump him. What other justification is there for the President of Kenya to take away the county government of Nairobi from Sonko, and procedurally? I mean, if he wanted to take away the county government of Kenya, of Nairobi from Sonko, he should have allowed public participation. The President should. He should have allowed the county assembly of Nairobi to vote supermajority in favor of taking away. But to one day give Sonko a call, and the guy, he has told us, and he goes to wherever they took him, and they tell him sign on the dotted line. He told us, in fact, he told us he had taken something.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he told us. I mean, that is not the way to take a county government. If the national government must take away a county government, it is written in the constitution. It should have been followed. And it's a shame that on that day, the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya was standing there. He should have advised the president that there is the due process. Thirdly, when I looked at it, the signing away of that, they call it the deed of transfer, signing the deed of transfer of the county government of Nairobi was done between Songo and Eugene Wamalwa.
Right.
Eugene Wamalwa is not head of the national government.
He's head of devolution.
He's the head of devolution.
Yes, and devolution is
when
key.
he was signing, Songo was handing over functions, including the functions of health and the functions of revenue collection and so on, which was outside the purview of the Minister for Devolution. The people who should have signed the deed of transfer should have been the president, who was receiving the government, and Songo, who was handing over the government. In the presence of Songo, I should have seen the attorney of the county government of Nairobi, just like we had the attorney general of Kenya for President Uhuru. They did it wrongly. I'm sure, I'm not a judge, I'm sure if it went to a bench, the bench would say that the decision...
Why did it not go to a bench? Why do we see now Sonko joining the bandwagon and working with President Uhuru Kenyatta, yet no one is raising an issue?
Carrot and stick. Carrot and stick is a tactic that works in politics. So they are tangling it to Sonko, telling him, take this, and if you don't take it, here are the consequences. Yeah. So the poor man is still under a lot of pressure.
Before we go for a break and incorporate somebody else who wants to join us, my question then goes back to what it is that I had asked initially. And I'm not trying to prophesy doom, but in the event that, you successfully do not find your ways to power, the DP does not find his way to presidency, or so to speak, what happens to this dream of ensuring that the common mwananchi, every other person, left, right, and center, regardless of where they come from, all walks of life, are able to be represented?
Two answers.
Yes.
The first one is philosophical. Life goes on.
All right. Accept and move on.
Yes. Okay. The second one is scientific. Michael Faraday, the man who discovered the bulb, did 400 tests. And every time he failed, he said, I have found yet another way in which it can't work. I can assure you, this dream is not my dream. It is not Ruto's dream. It's the dream of Kenyans. And if we are given time, because we are not fools, and we shall not apologize for the opportunity nature has given us to rise to where we are.
So there's nothing wrong with Baba trying again and again and again.
Yes. So let me tell you, this dream, if we have a bit of time, we are going to convert it into the Kenyan dream. Just like the Americans say, the American dream. We want the Kenyan dream to be that any child born within the Republic of Kenya has got access to any opportunity, and that access must be unlimited and it must be equal.
All right, Mheshimiwa, hold it right there. Let's incorporate Gloria Orwaba to this conversation, who's a youth policy analyst.
Who is that?
Let's get to hear Gloria Orwaba.
Oh,
yes, she'll be joining us to tell us more on the same. You know Gloria, yes, on the angle of the youth and what she feels about the representation
She's very good.
Of now. Yes, Gloria, we'll be coming to you after this break. And welcome back to the conversation. Remember, your feedback is very important right now. Most of the questions that you'll be sending will be here to ensure that Mheshimiwa gets to answer them. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela TV47K, the numbers to call and to send SMSs on running down on your screen. So indeed, Karibu Sana once again to the conversation. And Honorable Boni Khalwale is with me this morning. Mheshimiwa, before we leave on this question, or before we wind up on this question of a referendum, can we match up to the stamina of the likes of the UK? Baba says we have enough money in the country to conduct a referendum. UK, the other countries, the mature democracies conduct elections in a year like twice. So what makes us think that we're not able to do that? And Kenyans argue that probably we do not have enough money.
At a moment like that, at a moment like this, when Kenyans are finding it increasingly difficult to meet certain small things as small as food.
Yeah.
For you to say there is enough money is very unfortunate. To go even further and say that the 2 billion shillings required is very little money and therefore it should be made available is even more unfortunate. Why? Because how can the former Prime Minister talk as if 2 billion shillings is pocket change?
Okay.
Do you know what 2 billion shillings would do in Siaya, where he was born? These guys, they only go to the rural areas there for occasions. But for all intents and purposes, they come from Nairobi.
Right.
They're not like us who come from the rural areas. Yeah.
Always in Kakamega.
Yes. People would appreciate if they can have 100 shillings in their pocket.
Right.
Mr. Former Prime Minister, please, I want you to know that 100 shillings, which you think is very small, is the reason why a child in Siaya District Hospital died, a 5-year-old child died because of malaria.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have 100 shillings to go and buy the drip water to put in quinine to cure the child.
Right.
So we should talk responsibly.
And certainly also we should have a conversation sometime on the health, situation in the country, which again is pretty much unfortunate. Let's loop in Gloria Orwaba, who's a youth policy analyst, joining us this morning. Gloria, good morning.
Good morning.
I hope you've been following up the conversation.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa is here for you to ask all the questions that you'd want. I think I'd allow you to be my co-host this morning.
Thank you very much. I actually want to give my take on the Constitution at 10 years.
Right.
One of the things that we are putting focus on is devolution as well as separation of powers.
Yeah.
But from a youth perspective, it's very imperative that we also focus on the bills of rights and what has been done, because these are rights that have been protected by this Constitution, and we have over 20 of them. And from an angle of the youth perspective, we should pay attention to some of them. If, for instance, the freedom and security of a person that affects the youth. This means that from under the Bill of Rights, it is important that we understand that the arrest of citizens, particularly the youth, without being put to trial or just being detained for no apparent particular reason. This is something that has been on focus in the last couple of months, and particularly also now that we saw it with the Senate.
Yeah.
So for me, even as we focus on the wins of the Constitution after 10 years, we need to understand that we have a long way to go. We need to understand that in order for us to reach a place where we can safely say that maybe we need a referendum, we definitely should have gone through ensuring that we have some of the rights, like access to information, like freedom of expression. For instance, within the youth, we see a lot of creatives being arrested. Talk about artists being picked up, like there's a guy called Msingi who was actually picked up at Galleria. He was trying to take pictures for a photographic kind of expression. So these are some of the matters when it comes to the youth perspective that we have to push for in order for us to say that we have actually exercised the Constitution as is, and maybe now we need to look into amending some of the places or going into this referendum. So I thought maybe I should weigh in on that as we delve deeper in terms of the other elements like separation of power and how devolution has actually brought development down to the grassroots, even for the youth.
Very important. And as we wind up on that, Mheshimiwa, again, I think I want to loop you on what it is that Gloria has said. Gloria paints a picture of very many Kenyans who argue that maybe we should probably not have an amendment or changes or a referendum, but probably just try and work out the constitution that we have currently. And this would be the question. In the event that it sails through, how do we avoid the problem that we had initially where, some of the Kenyans would say, well, somebody else has read it, so we certainly do not have, we do not need to read it. Where do we make sure that the common mwananchi is incorporated in the process to make a just and a genuine decision?
The best law is the one that protects the weakest in society.
Right.
For starters, the weakest in our society are women and children. Our current constitution, in an attempt to protect the women who are weak, it put in the 2/3 gender rule.
Yeah.
So instead of, for example, focusing on implementing that particular provision in the constitution, we want to amend the constitution so as to speak to the greed of the stronger people of the society, i.e. men, i.e. rich men, i.e. rich men from dynastic families. Those are very powerful people. Yeah. Let us go and speak to the weak. If, and the Constitution is very clear, if Parliament is unable to provide for these weak people, the women, the 2/3 gender rule, the same Constitution prescribes that Parliament must be dissolved as a lesson. And the incoming Parliament, immediately as its first agenda item, addresses and legislates the 2/3 gender rule. Just about time we dissolved Parliament so that the members of Parliament who think they are so privileged can have an opportunity before they go into by-election to go and read the lives and times of members of Parliament who worked for the people. In the House of Commons, there's a beautiful story called The Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace is Honorable William, who decided that slaves might be free.
All right.
And because Parliament was serving the rich, the owners of slaves, he went against the grain until he succeeded. And that is the story of the Amazing Grace. We want members of Parliament to go through the Honorable William moment of Amazing Grace so that they give the women their 2/3 gender proviso. So that they give the youth their rightful share in government. Can you imagine a government that recalls from retirement people who are over 70 years old to come and do jobs for which the youth are better qualified? If I went for that kind of appointment, I can assure you, I'm 60 years old, and my children who have better education than me, and they are in that they have crossed into 30s. They were competing for the same. I would say, go and take it.
Right.
Go and take it. I don't need it. I can go and take care of my bulls in Malia.
All right. So, well, let's look in. And yes, Gloria, coming back to you. First of all, do you suppose, like Mheshimiwa says, that we need indeed that William moment? Do we have any leadership at hand right now? The leaders that we have, honestly, one of them or any of them that stands to take us to that moment?
I believe we do. And I believe some of these leaders are actually not necessarily the veteran politicians. I'm not talking of the likes of Martha Karua, who I adore. Yes. I'm not talking of the likes of the veterans who we are automatically looking at in terms of presidential candidates. But I'm just looking in the youth perspective, the scope of the leaders that we have in the youth. Unfortunately, what happens is we have to fight for these spaces. There's no clear pathway of how to graduate in the political scene as a youthful leader. So you're technically either fighting within the political parties for you to climb up the ladder from a volunteer or just a member to a secretary general, like we have seen as Edwin Sifuna. And then what next after being the secretary general? We're looking at leaders like Fred Okango, who is within the scope of the youth and are actually trying to define what it means to make it in the spaces of leadership within the political arena. But one of the things I want to touch on is what Honorable Boni has brought to place about the jobs being given to 70-year-olds, jobs that can easily be executed by youthful aspiring professionals. I want to bring to the attention the fact that this constitution was actually seen by the people of Kenya as a way to address issues on equitable distribution of resources, on historical land injustices, and also ensuring that Kenya is inclusive in terms of governance. But when you look at, for instance, one of our guiding books, or you'd say, it's called Mwongozo, which is used as a guiding governance protocol or something within our state agencies. One of the things that it does is it actually discriminates against the youth when it comes to appointments in leadership positions. It discriminates against the youth in terms of setting the prerequisites very high, such that by the time you have had 10 years experience, by the time you have had 5 years on senior management level, by the time you have had a degree to be appointed in as a CEO or a senior a state official within these parastatals or government agencies, you're definitely way past the youth age. So what happens is we have competent youthful leaders who are willing to take up the mantle, who are literally ready to run these institutions of the youth, but they are being set aside by institutions within government that are actually being protected by this constitution. So it's basically maligning the youth. And I think this is part of the things, before we start saying we need to change this constitution and we need to go into a referendum, we have a lot of cases within the Bills of Rights that we can try to implement and we can try to be better at. And also just to look into the devolution forum in terms of how we have devolved this power down to county level. Have we included women? Have we included the youth? Is it effectively being exercised? And then after that, run with it for 2, 3, 4 years, see where the loopholes are, the challenges, is when we can come back and say then indeed we need a referendum, if at all.
But then I'll ask this lastly. Brenda, the approach of the youth towards getting themselves into leadership, and Mheshimiwa, I also want to hear your take on the same. There's been argument, and you look at the wave across Africa. Yes, indeed, there are youths that are coming out and would want to get to leadership positions. But there's been that talk of politics of intolerance, that, they are chesting their way in, as opposed to addressing issues in a way that should be addressed, amicable ways, democratic ways for that matter. So when we're talking about the politics of intolerance, how then do we get our youths from that scope and get them, approach issues, issue-based, with ideologies, with, changes that indeed are going to be worth looking at, the issues that are taken stated in, Bobby Wine in Uganda. You just mentioned Fred Okango. And you saw what happened in Third Way Alliance yesterday. Of course, the spearhead guy being Fred Okango. First, before we look in Mheshimiwa on the same, are the youths taking a good approach towards this? Gloria.
I think what is happening is the youth don't have mentorship. And it's not only the mentorship issue, they're not given any spaces on these tables. So what is happening is that they're really trying to fight for their space in terms of leadership in the political arena. And this does not necessarily mean that there is one way to go about it. So you have mentioned some of the controversial youth leaders that have been in the media. That is their way of saying, I'm here. Listen to me. Now that I have your attention, can we probably focus on ABC? It's not necessarily the conventional way that we should go about it, but it's a starting point. And not to put so much pressure on the youth, but I feel as though one of the biggest gaps that we have as youth leaders is the lack of sensitization of our governance systems. For youth leaders to understand where are the channels where I can tap into and try to, be an advocate of the youth agenda. So maybe one of the things that we should focus on more and more is sensitization of our governance systems, making sure that the youth leaders really understand what is this government about, this Senate, whether it's the National Assembly, whether it's member of county assemblies, how then do I plug into those different spaces? When you go into government institutions, aside from the parastatals and the agencies that are focused on the youth agenda, just under the Ministry of ICT, Innovations and Youth, there are different forums in there that you can plug in, that you can try to say, okay, I am very strong in ICT, there's this program under youth and I can take leadership in certain areas in my community. So what you're seeing is there is lack of knowledge being imparted to the youth leaders in our communities. And therefore, what happens is that because they are fighting for a space at the table, they end up either taking the completely controversial way, as you're seeing the Secretary General of Third Way Alliance, Fred Okango, fighting with his chair and trying to ensure that the youth agenda and that the reason why that party was put to place is actually being seen to fruition. So I feel as though this is a starting point for the youth, because at least now you can see that we are starting to talk about the youth agenda within the political arena. So in the next couple of years, I hope that because of the sensitization of our governance systems, we might, as the youth, try to look for different approaches of achieving that youth agenda that we are strongly advocating for.
And also the women, taking a look at that affirmative action, and women have also been incorporated. We've tried so much to create space for the women, but equally conversations have been as to, we do not even know whether we need the women rep position, because probably they have not proved themselves, or if they have, they're not doing much for it to be felt across the public domain.
The people who are against positions that are preserved for women in the constitutions are the same ones who don't understand why we put those positions there. And when I say we, I do it deliberately, because we were in the generation that fought for this constitution. We put it there so that you give an opportunity for a woman to to enjoy acclimatization, because the political environment in this country is extremely hostile to women. If you allow me, when Honorable Senator Mutula Kilonzo Sr. passed on, the person who was first on the line was the daughter.
Kathy.
But I saw things happen in Ukambani, all manner of things in Wiper, until Kathy was knocked out and Junior came in. I'm not saying Junior is not up to it, but it just speaks to the complexities of the ecosystem in which women are expected to practice politics. So it was intended that this woman would be given a soft landing, she acclimatizes, and then goes into competitive politics. What I want to encourage the women who succeed as women MPs, they should not stay on into that position. The ones who succeed as nominated MPs, they should not stay on. They should be there for maximum of 2 terms, then they leave the space for somebody else to enjoy that particular space.
Competitive like Nesula Lesuda, the likes of them.
And you cannot blame Gloria for her worry. She's saying, youth try. but they are faced with impossible challenges.
Right.
There are two things which are serious challenges to our youth when they want to rise. The first one is tribalism stroke nepotism.
Yeah.
The people in power would like to support the youth who come from their ethnic background or their families. The second one is the role played by the older politicians. The older politicians, they are not only old, but they are powerful, and they use that power to make it impossible
for this to switch,
for the youth to come up. I mean, I would love a situation whereby a Kenyan leader did what Mandela did, where Mandela said, I have served for 4 years, I think I have done what I should have done, I give way. Our guys must go on. Is this my winding remark?
No, well, your winding remark then, I'll allow you. But before that, the Senate committee, the 12-member committee argues, now that we spoke about Mutula Kilonzo, brought me to that Senate aspect, and you are a former senator, finally says that, they have a solution to the stalemate, the revenue share stalemate as it stands. What do you expect?
Very exciting. The only breakthrough on this stalemate will be occasioned by adopting what the deputy president has requested the country to say, i.e., let nobody lose and let nobody win at the expense of another person.
How possible?
So it should be win-win.
It's a possible thing?
It's very possible.
It is achievable?
Oh, I have been in Senate for 5 years, right at the forefront of fighting for equity, and I know it is doable.
Will the politics around you suppose that is what they're going to present to us?
If you visit my timeline,
yes,
I tweeted right at the beginning that the only way senators will be able to debate this matter with sobriety is when BBI politics, handshake politics are removed, and when President Uhuru and former Prime Minister do not express their interest. So what is at play now is not that formula.
Okay.
There are these other issues that are now at play. We must do it the way it would please the handshakers and the BBIists.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's why they're having
so sadly, we might not be able to get anything. Is that a polite way of telling us?
No, looks a bit daisy.
Let's cross our fingers for the best all the same. Devolution is at stake, Glory, as we get to wind up. How do we solve the situation? It was supposed to ensure that we get, job opportunities for youth, get services to the people. But then with such conversations, while incorporated in the Constitution, but we are not able to achieve solutions. They put devolution at that point whereby we start questioning whether we needed it from the word go, much as many argue that it was the best thing that could happen to us. What do you suppose would be the Senate's deliberation, and what can we do to save devolution briefly?
I think the first thing we can do is we have to absolutely acknowledge that devolution is good for this country. Devolution is what has brought development to the grassroots and the corners of this nation where national government would not otherwise have reached. I mean, look at areas like Machakos, where they have the People's Park. They have really tapped into the recreational element of the county. When you go to Makueni, this is the first county where we are seeing a county healthcare system that is really looking at the population, even providing over 65-year-olds free medical care without having to pay any premiums. Devolution should not be looked at as a negative thing that we introduced to this country, but as the tool that has actually driven, first of all, the developments in our counties, that has driven the youth to finally start believing that they are indeed the future of this country. So I feel as though the first starting point is to respect and appreciate the wins of devolution and what this constitution has delivered to the people. Because at the end of the day, the sovereign power is to the people. Now, when you talk about what should we do to ensure that we protect devolution. I really believe that we should encourage independence within these systems, within the judicial system, within the executive, within the National Assembly and the Senate. If these institutions ran as according to how the Constitution was drafted and how they envisioned it, then we should only be talking about fine-tuning certain areas on affirmative action with the youth and gender, fine-tuning areas where we have discovered loopholes when it comes to, for instance, impeaching governors or passing over of powers from county back to national government. We should be fine-tuning elements of this constitution and not looking at it as a whole and saying, let's throw this away. And in fact, the question on the referendum to me is not a question that we should be entertaining at this moment, because the sovereign power is to the people, and the people have not really asked for a referendum. The people have not said they are tired of the county system. The people are actually excited and looking forward to the next elections, where they get to cast their own votes to pick the presidency, and not a certain few, according to the proposed system, that will pick the presidency or the prime minister or the top leadership. So I feel as though, as we're celebrating 10 years of the Constitution, it is really imperative for us to focus on the wins, and then look at it as a living document in terms of fine-tuning what devolution has brought to us.
All right, well articulated, Mheshimiwa. Do I have to say anything more?
Yeah,
it's
you
time
have
to wind up the session.
You have to.
No, you wind up the session.
You have to.
Yes.
You know, listening to Gloria, I want her to readjust a little bit. Yes, she admires mother. I do admire mother. But I would like her to admire a second person who is younger. Mm-hmm. There is a politician called Cicely Mbarire. Mm-hmm. Cicely Mbarire came to Parliament with me at the same time, right, and she was very young. Mm-hmm. She's an example of a youth, how a youth should progress in politics. Mm-hmm. Secondly, if I was a head of a political party, you would? Uh-huh. I would put this young lady mm-hmm. on the nomination list. Nice. Because with these lofty ideas, mm-hmm. they will count for nothing until she has a foothold in Parliament. Right. I want to wind up by requesting the President to bear with me. He's been repeatedly telling Kenyans that there is a constitutional moment. Mm-hmm. Mr. President, I beg to differ. There is no constitutional moment in Kenya. Oh, yeah. Your Excellency, mm-hmm. the issue of constitutional moment was spoken to for the first time over 200 years ago in the United States of America in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And what they meant, Your Excellency, by a constitutional moment, that a moment comes in the life of a nation when the institutions of that nation mm-hmm. should undergo profound, underline the word profound, profound change. Now, what moment has happened in Kenya that is convincing the head of state to believe that the institutions of the Republic of Kenya should undergo profound change? In fact, we don't want our institutions to undergo profound change. They say what we want taxpayer is overburdened. What we want our institutions to do is for them to enjoy their space under the current constitution. If you allowed the judiciary to enjoy its space, then the 49 or so judges who President Uhuru should have appointed would have appointed by now. Mm-hmm. Then access to justice by Kenyans would not be as frustrating as it is. Even with questionable integrity, as the President's office would say? Precisely. Then if you wanted institutions to work, then you would allow Senate to work so that money would not only go to counties, but money would follow functions. The functions of health, mm-hmm. for example, in Mandera and Wajir, they require more money than the same functions in Kiambu, the same functions in Nairobi. Mm-hmm. because the structures of health are far ahead in these two areas. Do you know, as a doctor of medicine,
yeah,
I understand why money should go to Mandera? It's because, thanks to devolution, for the first time, cesareans
were
conducted thanks to devolution in those areas. Now, if they were being done for the first time 50 years after independence, it means for 50 years, Somali Kenyan women have been dying in the villages because of lack of access to cesarean action. It is important. Now look, when you deny Mandela a paltry 1.2 billion shillings, which they wanted to use for water, what do they use that money for? They use that money to build small water ponds for their livestock and so on. Somebody who comes, for example, Mount Kenya, who is feeling bitter that 1.2 billion shillings is going to Mandera to do water ponds, should be grateful forever to God that he was born in Mount Kenya, because as we fight them for the 1.2 billion, we are constructing Itare Farm, Karimenu Farm, a dam that ran in the region of over 60 billion shillings. So if your area in the same budget has got access to 60 billion from the national government, what's wrong with 1.2 billion going to Mandera because of devolution? This is the global view that we want people who succeed to go to parliament to carry with them. Yes, you fight for what should come to your area because all politics is local, but ensure that the whole country is developing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. Gloria, I think you've heard that offer by Mheshimiwa well, but again, if I told he was a party leader, but all the same, he's somewhere that he's somewhere. You cannot bank on that. In 30 seconds, Gloria, what would be your parting shots? In 30 seconds, please.
My parting shot as we celebrate 10 years of this constitution is that we need to give things time. We need to see things to fruition. We need to stop being very quick at saying this is not working. We need to drop it. My parting shot, particularly to the youth, is be the voices of reason. Find space to plug in. If you have to fight for it, and look for a mentor who will be able to sensitize you around our governance systems. That would be my parting shot.
Well, Gloria Oroba, Youth Policy Analyst, thank you so much for the great insights, and equally Honorable Dr. Boni Khalwale, who is the former Kakamega Senator. It was great having you this morning, and I'm looking forward to more sessions. That's where we get to wind up this particular session of Current Affairs as we cross over to Matters Lifestyle after this brief. And thank you so much also for your feedback. Well, gender-based violence, silent crisis, or so to speak, as many would call it. Oftenly, we also have boys and men being violated out there, being abused out there, but they do not come out to speak. As it stands, it's been hard to deliberate on the global numbers of cases or the cases of men being violated across the world, simply because, they just choose to suffer in silence. Some of them are being violated, but they do not have an idea as to whether actually that is violence meted against them or not. So this morning, we'll be talking about gender-based violence on men, and that is the conversation that is going to be driven by two gentlemen and who probably have decided, enough is enough. It's time that we come out and speak. This is not to, declare a war, but this is simply to remind the society that this is happening and we need to address it. And they are models. I'll probably allow them the latitude to introduce themselves because they are all Mr. Model World. I do not understand Mr. Model Worldwide. Yeah? All right, introduce yourself, gentlemen.
Okay, Kito Kevin. The first runners-up, Mr. Model Worldwide Kenya.
Yeah.
I'm the one representing Kenya right now. They will not represent us in India come next year.
All
after
right.
Corona, after COVID.
That's good.
Yeah. I'm a 4-year student, set to graduate this September.
Congratulations.
Virtually, I'll be in my bed graduating.
Oh, yeah, congratulations. I know, right? Man, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I want to be able to toast the...
But the drama is too much, by the way. After that, you'll just realize that it was actually the best thing.
Yeah.
Because the tension you'd be having right now, if it was on a normal time, it would be out of this world.
That's
so
good,
yeah.
So my name is Kita Bonyo. I am a graduate from the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication.
Right.
I'm just an aspiring journalist.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm also part of the team. Actually, we are a team, the three of us, and there are others. So apart from speaking up for men, there are other activities that we do, but mainly we just want to be that voice that people listen to. At least we are sure that we can make a change. Yes.
In your activities of speaking to men, are there scenarios where you've had conversations, candid conversations, and talk with them? And what do they say informs this silent, especially when negatives are meted upon them in society?
Okay, as per se, the event was a month ago. So we started our projects. Yesterday we were in South Bay, visiting a rehabilitation center over there.
Yeah.
We visited some kids, talked to them, have some time with them. But we are not victims, but we are trying to advocate for those who are in silence. They're suffering, they're scared to come out. So we still have plans, a lot to come. We are planning on meeting victims, so they're the ones who knows firsthand what's going on. And with them, they'll be able to help us tackle it. Yeah.
Without having met them before, what makes you have the confidence or believe that indeed there are men who are out here and are suffering in silence?
Actually, my case is a little bit different from his, because I think ever since I was young until this age, I've grown with some people who have been going through that. I've seen parents who are living with only their sons, and most likely their sons are likely to turn out into something else just because of poor parental choices, or maybe the environment that they were brought up in was just a little bit different. And so actually I've had friends who have really been talking to try to change the way they see life from a different angle.
Yeah.
So I think to me it has been like a calling. Like I have been doing this, and it's part of what defines who I am, because I like it when maybe if I speak to someone, it will change something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take it a little bit higher in a bid to address this and speak for the men who are silent out there. What programs are open out here, and what really is the government doing towards? I don't know whether you've had you've had sessions with government or the government to understand whether indeed the government is interested in addressing some of this issue. Do you suppose that the silence could have been informed by the fact that the society has painted it as though that is the woman who's the vulnerable one, and the woman is always the one who's on the receiving end, as opposed to men, such that men think even if I go out there and speak, no one would believe me?
The issue is not, let's not blame it to the government.
Yeah.
The issue is between us as men. We're afraid to come out because of shame. Our forefathers usually took us men as warriors. So if a man comes out and say, I'm being violated at home by my wife, by my girlfriend, so he sees like I'll be demeaned, so I'll be belittled. There's this term called machismo. Machismo means the art of being man. So for me to come out and say, at home, my wife does this, I'm being abused, I'm being beaten, so it's very difficult. So it's up to us to come out. It takes courage. It will help you, it will help your family, and your health will be good. Yeah.
All right, how do we move from that point where, you know, there's that feel like, oh, you have to be a man, there's stigma surrounding a man who feels like they're weak. There is a pointing of fingers when, you know, a man cries and, you know, you're told a man should not cry. I mean, what is being done towards getting the society from that angle and to looking at men as though they are human before they are men?
Actually, men are human inside.
Yeah.
Actually, they say that when
but why should it be that? Yeah.
But I think the first step to conquering this is that taking that bold step and speaking.
Yeah.
The moment you share it, we say sharing is
caring.
Also a part of
all right.
It's caring and also it's a part of well-being. So the moment you step out and speak, like you say, I am a man, I have been going through this. I won't see you as a weak person. I will see you as somebody who is trying to change the life of another person through talking. Because if you speak, I speak, you speak. At the end of the day, we'll come to a common decision that we have to speak about this.
Yeah.
So there have been movements to like suppress this in the society. There was this movement to end depression, but it never ended well because a larger part of it were women. Women are the one who was speaking.
Right.
But I was thinking if there will be something that could be done, like let's start a movement that will allow men to speak freely without being scrutinized, without being judged. It will be something that is really amazing and it will change a lot.
We still do not have that, and this is a global crisis, so to speak.
The reason why women have a lot of platforms to address this issue is because they come out.
Yeah.
They say we face this and it's time to stop. But when we stray back, we won't have that opportunity to be helped. We won't have that opportunity for someone to come here and say, okay, let's start this campaign. Let's try and do this and end this. Ladies have a lot of platforms, support groups. They can meet as friends, talk about it. But as when you meet, it's only business. Someone is afraid if I say, when I go back home, I'll sleep on the couch. You'll be laughed at.
Right.
Yeah, so if we don't come out, we won't have the opportunity to be helped. So that's the reason why, as men, we have very little opportunities or platforms to address these issues.
At what point should we start incorporating this confidence to speak out? At what age should you start telling your boys, you know what, it is okay to cry, it is okay to go out there and speak, it is okay to approach mommy or daddy and tell them that this is what I'm going through in school? I mean, at what point should we start instilling this?
Actually, I think little kids, they are more of copycats than listeners.
Yeah.
Like, they will see what you do before they listen to what you say. So I think when you start by doing it yourself, like you start speaking about this, like let's say a husband and a wife, they have a problem in the house, and then you sit down and talk about it, and you express it like to the 100%, no hiding feelings, and then your son will be there like watching. When dad has problems, he really talks to mom, and mom really listens.
Right.
So that is when the son will start saying like, these things, we do talk about them. And then when we talk, we solve a lot of things. I think that one will be good. So I think from a tender age, when you have your son, you just be transparent with him, you just do things that are really necessary, so that when he sees them, he's really up to it, that one day, one time, I will be like dad, and I will have to speak about these things and change lives.
Awesome. Now, there are grounds when, you are facing violence in whatever form it is, but you probably have no idea that it is. So what space then should be created so that people get to understand that, you know, at this point this is love, at this point this is torture, at this point this is toxic, at this point, you know,
the moment it reaches a point that you're back there at your office, keep your thoughts running in mind. Okay, my wife did this morning, he abused me, she says these things about me, I'm not providing. The moment you'll be spending your time thinking over it, it has gotten into you. And it's not healthy. It will affect you. Your daily activities want to be normal again. That's the point where you realize it's overboard. Yeah, this is the time where you have to have some help. Either you have a sit down with her, talk about it. If you are not willing, or if you don't come to an agreement, then seek the third party. Seek help from professionals.
And violence is not just violence, physical of it. So sometimes it gets emotional, it gets verbal, it gets all that. So how do they disseminate that and chart the way forward and, just ensure that, this is probably addressed and does not make them feel less of human beings?
Actually, okay, we men, actually when it comes to sexual issues, most of us, we can't realize that this one is violence or this one is, it's hard for us because maybe it can be that, but somebody maybe is enjoying it, but he doesn't know that this one is something that is bad. But I'm thinking of something, let's say like this, when we have a forum and then we talk to men, we tell them that this exists in the society. At this age, when this one is done to you, it's supposed to be something that is not good. But at this age, you have the consent. You can do anything that you want. But so we find ourselves in a situation that we keep a lot to ourselves. It happens, but we keep a lot to ourselves because you're not sure either if this is something right or this is something wrong. So the best way to go about this is when you feel like you're unsure about something. It doesn't have to be a counselor, it doesn't have to be your parents, it doesn't have to be, it's just have to be someone that you can confide in. It can be a girlfriend, it can be your brother, it can be your sister. You just tell him, actually I'm going through this and I'm confused. Is it the right thing or is it the wrong thing? I think when you start thinking from that perspective, everything is going to change because I will have an idea of what I want, what I don't want, what I think about this and what another person thinks about this. And then when I combine all this, I'll be sure that this is not harassment, this is not violence, this is not something. So the decisions will matter after the conversations.
All right. And as we get to wind up, in most cases then you realize that, so this is violence all this while. It's hard for someone to stand their ground and tell this person, what you've been violating me for the longest of time and I won't agree that again. How do you get to that point, or how do men get to that point whereby they'll say, okay, well, I have known this is not healthy for me and this is not what I want? They can comfortably come out and speak, and once they're out of it, they still maintain that bravado, knowing that yes.
Okay. The moment you realize there's something that's going on in your life, it's not normal. You have been having your activities normally daily, but due to something that you have been going through in your house, with your wife, maybe with your friends, your family members, and it has reached to a point it affects how you deal with life. It has reached a point that it's time for you to get help. Because at that moment, you've been violated. You may not be knowing, but another person, your friend, will have to tell you there's something going on in your life. It's not normal. You've changed. These days you're sad, these days you're silent. It's because of something you don't know, but you don't want to ask about it. You don't want to confront it. So you better come, seek advice, or have a sit down, as I said before. The best thing is talk with the person who evaluates you. If she's not, or if he's not willing to listen to you, then it's time for you to make a decision.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for the great insight. Sadly, time is not on our side, but I'm sure we're going to have this conversation some other time. So in 30 seconds, speak to the men out there who are silent and are feeling the pinch as it is right now. You can go first, yes.
So actually, I'd love to say that domestic violence is something that we have been living with since the past, but it's high time that somebody really does something about it, especially to the men. The women, we are sure that they are well taken care of, and even men play a major role in helping the women. But I'll just love to say that let's divert the energy a little bit and focus on men, especially the current generation. We are really out of order. So if somebody will just be that good person who can speak, and not just speak to the soul of somebody, because just speaking, somebody will listen, and then itasha tu hivyo. But we need somebody who can speak, we can do it in form of arts, we can do it in form of music. The current music is something that is way, actually it's promoting this thing.
All right.
So there is a way that you can speak to a soul through poetry, through music, but good music. You know what I mean?
I do, 101%.
So that should be what I have to say.
All I have to say is, for your salvation to happen, it's up to you. The first steps, it's you to take it. So from there on, you know what to do.
Right.
So be brave, come out. They'll call you names, but at the end of the day, you'll help yourself, you'll help other people outside there. Yeah, so
certainly doesn't make you less.
Yeah, it doesn't make you less.
Man. All right,
Yeah.
Kevin Kiptor and Braham Mutini, thank you so much for the great insights. That's where we get to wind up this session. Nicole, thank you so much for watching us all the way. Like we say, it's a conversation that is quite huge. And now that we have people who are boldly speaking about it, I think it's time that we give it space so people are able to come out, speak when things are not working out for the betterment of themselves. Thank you so much. My name is Linda Alela. That's where we get to wind up this session of Morning Cafe as we look forward to see you again tomorrow. Do enjoy the rest of your day.